Om Sarvopanishad Kavo Dogda Gopalanandana Parthavatsa Sudhir Bhokta Dugdam Gitamritam Maha. All the Upanishads are likened to a cow. The cowherd boy is Krishna. The calf is Arjuna. People of purified intellect are the drinkers of the milk, and the milk is of the nature of supreme nectar. The Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, verse 4. We have subtitled it The Eightfold Nature of God. We had stated that from this chapter, beginning from the 7th, till the next 6 chapters, there will be a predominant theme of the nature of Tat, reality, God. The first 6 chapters were predominantly about the nature of the human soul. So this starts, the Lord has started speaking about His nature. This Prakriti of mine is divided eightfold: earth, water, fire, air, space, mind, intellect, and also the sense of I. This is the eightfold. Bhumirapo nalo vayuhu kammano buddhirevacha ahankara iti yamme bhinna prakritirashtada. This is the famous Prakriti Ashtada, the eightfold Prakriti. Now, it has to be mentioned that Prakriti is a general term for nature. And according to the philosophies, this nature is viewed differently. For instance, in the Sankhya philosophy, which is the oldest philosophy in the world, as Swami Vivekananda also says, Prakriti is looked upon as Pradhana, chief, the first. And from that has evolved this sensible universe. But it is inert. And with the association of the Purusha, consciousness, this whole nature seems to be enlivened. But it is generally taken as, well, it's jada, it's inert. I mean, there's no consciousness, there's no life. While Vedanta makes a clear distinction between this Prakriti as the power of the Lord called Maya. And the commentator makes a very clear statement also. Ishwari Maya Shakti, when he talks about this Prakriti of mine, this nature of mine is made out of God's power, the power of reality, if you can say it. So this power of reality, which is called Maya, the power of this Maya Shakti, it is a conscious principle. And that's the reason why Vedanta has brought in the mind the intellect, and also the sense of I, asmita. Now, the 5 major elements, earth, water, fire, air, and ether, the space. So, the modern people say, there. See how ridiculous these old people were. We have 118 elements on the periodic table. Well, all those 118 elements, they have evolved from 3 main sources. First is what is called the expansion of the universe, popularly called the Big Bang. There was no big and there was no bang also. So, but, blame it on people who like to have nice sound and light and music there. So the first elements were nothing but hydrogen and helium, and then it was like plasma, and then they combined and cooled, and it started expanding. The space started expanding. So that was the first nucleosynthesis, it's called. Big Bang, for that matter, Big Bang nucleus. The second is, it went on expanding and cooling, and then there was something called the stellar nucleosynthesis, where everything, the dust and the soup started clumping into, you can say, stars. And then there was a fusion, and as the fusion is growing, and when all the fuel has been exhausted, and then it collapses, the core collapses, and then there's a huge expansion. It's called a boom, supernova. So that collapse, that fusion is called stellar nucleosynthesis. And then you have the supernova synthesis, nucleosynthesis, where all these elements are finally cooked. It started off with the basic things, plasma, something hot. And what happens is, we take things for granted. 1/3 of a second, that there's a quantum fluctuation, and that 1/3 of a second, everything expands. Ordinarily, it's just not possible for us to imagine this kind. How do you imagine that? But mathematically, it is possible to derive those equations. However, so we will say, okay, there are 5 great elements, and the commentator Shankaracharya makes it very clear, these are the very subtle elements. We're not talking about the gross elements of earth, water, fire, air, and space. It's clear. Space also is an element. And then the Lord brings in mind. Yeah, oh, my mind? Yes, the mind also is in nature. And people have been trying to search consciousness in the mind. Yes, mind is only subtle matter, that's all. Which, of course, it's very scientific. Because people are equating mind with brain. That's okay. Search the brain for that. Intellect, intelligence, it's a more subtle form of the mind. And then the sense of I, the ahankara. So what is ahankara? Is that sense of I. It is there in each and every cell of the body. It's each and every cell, the bacteria and the viruses and everything has that sense of I. Everything has a sense of I. Everything has intelligence. Yes. Everything has a mind. And that is embodied in these 5 elements, which there's a kind of a, as I say, permutation and combination. It's technically called panchikaranam. So there is an admixture. So here you have this whole nature explained. The commentator, of course, in order to make this in consonance with the other declarations of the Smriti, they say that this Maya Shakti, this I, Bhinna Prakritir Ashtada, me, itiyam me, this is mine. The Lord is very clearly saying mine. And the commentator says, Ishwari, that's the divine power of Maya. So Vedanta has two main aspects where creation is mentioned. One is creation and creator are not different. The illustration is given like a spider that spins out a web from its own body and projects it outside and then withdraws it. Similarly, God projects the universe out of itself. Otherwise, you will have to have God one way, and then the materials. Where did you get this material from? Swamiji loved to explain in kind of in a humorous way. So there was a preacher in the south, and then he's saying, then God, he made a form of Adam out of clay, and then he puts it against a fence to dry it out. So there was one very attentive, you can say, person in the congregation. Hey, just a moment, preacher. Where did that fence come from? So the preacher says, Tom, don't be asking such questions. You'll be smashing all theology. So, where did the fence come from? So, if Vedanta solved this problem, we don't have to bother about fences. Where did God get the materials from? Oh, well, the materials issue out of God itself through its power of Maya. So this is called the Upadana Karana. That is you can say the material cause of the universe is what? God himself. Really? Yes. Is it just kind of a theory? Oh no. In the lives of the living free, take for instance Sri Ramakrishna, he experienced everything as God. Everything? Yes, everything as God. So it is a final stage of realization. Swami Shardananda says that I want to see God in all beings. Sarva Bhuti Brahma Darshan. Sri Ramakrishna, that's a final word you can say, in spiritual realization. I want that, nothing else. Sri Ramakrishna smile, oh, you will get that. So, if this was non-different from God, you will be smashing all theology. There's another aspect of creation, which is called Nimitta Karan, the instrumental cause. Now, what is that? It is God himself. God is the instrument as well as the material cause of whatever you see. So this universe has not come from something inert. It's not a material creation. And besides, matter itself is a kind of illusion. You see, there's so much matter around. Well, it's all energy. You're seeing it as matter. So good for us. So you see, these old sages, finally, yeah, they were right. Yes, of course they were right. Has to be right, because that is that perception. They never cooked it up in their brain saying that, oh, it should be like something like this. No. And then, see, space, when it coalesces or condenses, becomes air. Air, when it becomes condensed more, it becomes fire, because air has that rapidity of movement, and that creates a friction that generates heat, the fire. And that fire kind of cools. It becomes water. And that water further condenses, becomes the earth. There you have it. The whole sequence. It's called an evolution. This whole universe is an eightfold evolution, broadly speaking. So all the elements that you see are nothing but that. So those elements which were, we can say, cooked in the fiery cores of the stars and supernovas, they are right now in us. We are made of star stuff. If the supernovas wouldn't have gone supernova, we wouldn't have materials. So the whole universe is one. And that's what today's astronomers talk about. This universe is kind of, looked at it macrocosmically, is smooth, is homogeneous. How do we know it? Yeah, the remnants of that first expansion of the universe, we have a map of that. Okay? Cosmic background radiation. And it's smooth. Good for us. So this eightfold nature of God, it's not just nature. Eightfold nature, no. Eightfold nature of God. And that's what the core message of Vedanta is. Everything is God. Everything? Yes. So, as you just mentioned, this, from the 7th chapter onwards, it will be speaking about tat, that. The tvam is over. You are, that thou, has been dealt with in the 6 chapters. From the 7th chapter onwards, that, the nature of reality, will be dealt with in its macrocosmic form. So, even that macrocosmic form is also found in the microcosm. Another stumbling block in understanding Vedanta is they will speak in terms which are contradictory. Anoraniyan mahato mahiyan. The smaller than the smallest atom and greater than the greatest is this Atman. I will say, what is this? How can the Atman be like this and how can it be like that? Smaller than the smaller atom, smallest atom? It is speaking of oneness. There is no contradiction. It's a whole spectrum starting from the smallest to the greatest. It's one. It's oneness. So once you understand these basic concepts of oneness in Vedanta, this contradiction goes away. So the macrocosm is reflected in the microcosm. So like there's that whole thing there out in the universe, it's out here also within you. So the moment you can see the whole ocean in a drop of water, you have attained knowledge. Not before that. So can you see the ocean? It's not possible to have the ocean in a drop of water, but that is knowledge. Comprehensive knowledge has come to you. And then this is what? So within you, you will find that infinity. That is that divinity that's within you. Otherwise, I've seen, I've felt, that all these things, Vedanta simply dismisses it. Do you feel oneness? We're not talking about visions and sentiments and spiritual emotions and vibrations and energies, which is the talk of the town, regarding spirituality. All that is kind of simply dismissed. Can you feel oneness with creation? If you can, then you are spiritual. There is now no differentiation between you and this. On a deeper level, everything is just oneness. How is it possible to have this whole thing? Yes, the sense of I, then there's intelligence, cosmic I and cosmic intelligence. Why is I? Because if the sense of I isn't there, nature, looked at it from the standpoint of just nature, is not impelled. And what impels each one of us? The sense of I. The moment you go to sleep, see what happens? There's no impulsion. There's no mind. There's no intelligence. It's all mechanics there. Things are running out according to the old, you can say, it's nature. So it's a sense of I. So this I is embedded. You say, who am I? Who am I? Please don't do that. Who am I? Who am I? There are people who are trying to preach to find out who am I. If you go to the asylum, you will find people, who am I? Who am I? Who am I? Who am I? Don't you know who are you? Try to find who are you inside. You will not be able to find that I. It's in a diffused form everywhere, inside, outside, everywhere. So this is how the sages saw this whole creation, by analyzing this, everything inside and out. So here the Lord has laid down the basic grounding of nature. Okay? The Lord's nature, not just nature, the Lord's nature. And then he takes it one notch higher, he takes it a step higher. The 5th verse is, Apareyamitam stvanyam prakritim vidhi me param jiva bhutam mahabhavo yayedam dharyate jagat. Wow, what beautiful this say. O mighty armed one. That is, he's addressing Arjuna. Mahabhavo. Maha is great, Bhavo is arms. That is the one with tremendous physical strength he had. This is the inferior Prakriti, this is the inferior nature. What? We thought this was everything. Wait, so he says, this is the inferior Prakriti. Know the other Prakriti of mine, know the other nature of mine, which, however, is higher than this. Oh, well, after all the huge description that we've had, and then the Lord says, this is my lower nature. Okay, there's a higher nature. And what he says, which has taken the form of individual souls, and by which this whole world is upheld. So on the final analysis, he's saying, this is this individual soul, which is called consciousness. This consciousness is what holds everything together. You need a glue. You need a super glue to hold things together. Call it the crazy glue or gorilla glue or whatever. That is what holds everything together. Other everything will get, you can say, dissipated. What holds everything together? Consciousness. And that's the reason why subconsciously all the sciences are trying to discover what's consciousness. Physicist, what is consciousness they're talking about? Neurologist, what is consciousness? Psychologist, what is consciousness? Biologist, what is consciousness? But you're supposed to study the cell, and you're supposed to study the atoms and quarks and all these kind of things. Why are you talking about consciousness? No, we find that this is the basic bedrock of everything, all phenomena. Exactly. This is exactly what this verse is talking about. It is this consciousness that holds everything together. The phenomena is kind of on the surface. You study phenomena, you come down to that which holds the phenomena, the noumenon. That's why Vedanta will not make a difference between physics and metaphysics. There is no, everybody says, yeah, science and religion has to be joined together. Even Swami Vivekananda at times is saying, yeah, this will be the future. Why? Vedanta is saying, how can you differentiate this knowledge with that knowledge? Initially, they talk about secular and spiritual knowledge, but this secular knowledge will lead you to the spiritual knowledge. Even in the Upanishads, Mundaka Upanishad, a student goes to the teacher. What is that, knowing which you know everything? Kasminno bhagavo vijñātam sarvamidam vijñātam bhavati. What is that, by knowing which you know everything? So the teacher, Gautama, says, there are two types of knowledge. Secular knowledge, he enumerates them as all the Vedas and the etymology and the grammar and astrology and everything. So, Rig Veda, Yajurveda, Samaveda, Tirvangira, Shiksha, Kalpa, etc. Then he said, this is lower knowledge. And the higher knowledge, through which you can understand everything. Yaya tad aksharam adigamyati, through which you will know that imperishable. That was always the education in ancient India, and that is now being revived. You will have to come to that stage where, by knowing that imperishable, you will know everything. Our minds, our knowledge are leading us towards that. It cannot be otherwise. This very fact proves, this verse, that everything is held by that consciousness. Now, you must not understand consciousness as, individual soul, it's like a small, tiny kind of atom. There are some philosophies talk about atom and this and that, and small, like a grain of paddy and this and that. It is, these things have been given for us to meditate upon. Angushta matra, the Purusha, the size of a thumb. So you can meditate on consciousness with this visualization. And then you will find that consciousness cannot have a, you can say, limit of the body. If consciousness can be limited, your consciousness can be limited by the body, that means consciousness has not enough stuff in it. Consciousness is everywhere. So it holds everything together. When we see the end of this eightfold Prakriti, what holds everything together is consciousness. So he's saying, O mighty armed one, this is the inferior Prakriti, the eightfold Prakriti. Know the other Prakriti of mine, of God, the other nature, which is higher than this, which has taken the form of individual souls and by which this world is upheld. There is nothing, no need for going here to heavens and being afraid of going to hells and everything. It's all here and now. So you just fine-tune your perceptions. All that mythology is now discarded for the real thing. Why do you put your mind on mythological things? Why don't you see this thing? Worship nature if you don't have anything much to do. Then you worship nature. How do you worship nature? Well, you go and protect the environment. Be an environmentalist. That's much better than sitting down with your eyes closed and thinking about other things. This world is a product of God's power. It is the Lord Himself. As Swamiji says, He projects and He withdraws. He Himself becomes a projection and Himself withdraws. So this is the highest truth. This is the conception of God. But what about this personal God, and what about all these things? Vedanta does not dismiss it. Like I said, takes the smallest, from the smallest to the highest. Everything is one connective, you can say, organic whole, which the next verse will speak about. Everything inside. Etadyonini bhutani sarvani upadharaya aham kritsnasya jagata prabhava pralayastata. That's another beautiful. I am the beginning, I am the end. It's like, it's also in the Old Testament, the Torah. I am the Alpha and the Omega. What does that mean? Here you say, I am the beginning, I am the end. I am the beginning, I am the creation. And I am the end of creation also. So here you have, but what about creation? You must understand, and now we have some theories put forward, that this expansion of this whole universe, or this creation, as we call it, this creation, which is about 13.77 billion years old, imagine. It has taken so long for matter to evolve like this. They are saying it's just one bubble in the field. What is that field? Well, they call it a field. They don't know what it is. So, the beginning, the whole universe bubbles out from that field. And there's something called inflaton. It's got an inflationary model. So it inflates. And like all bubbles, then it dissipates, it goes back. But there is also already a kind of a field. So you have many universes coming up and going down. We are not aware. We only can see a limited aspect of this universe. And we don't know if all those stars that we see, or galaxies we see, are still there, existing or not. They must have been blown off by some supernova. The light that's coming here has taken billions of years. Just think of it, billions of years. We've been, as a species, we've been here just a little over 100,000 years when we began looking at the skies and looking around and started thinking things. So it's a huge, huge time span. So don't worry about creation. So if the creation goes up, like when you go to deep sleep, when you're in that, what happens? Do you exist or no? Well, you know you existed then. It's something like that. Okay, this whole creation might pop and go off, but there is something called existence. This is that consciousness that the Lord speaks. So the Lord says, understand thus that all things, sentient and insentient, have these as a source. These two natures of God, the inferior nature of God, the lower, the eightfold Prakriti, and that which holds that Prakriti together, the individual soul's consciousness. These. So know everything has emerged from the combination of these two natures of God. Then he says, I am the origin as also the end of the whole universe. Aham. There is one thing. Oh, the Lord becomes so egotistical. I. But that has to be interpreted differently. When the Lord is saying I, he is identified with the whole. So like you, when you say I, you're identified with your body. When the Lord says I, the Lord is identified with the creation. So, vast creation. So he says I. So now you know who's the boss here. So he's saying, this is the etad yonini bhutani. This is the womb of all creatures. Sarvani upadharayat. Understand this, he's saying. Understand, thus, telling Arjuna, understand that these two natures of mine is the womb of everything, all creatures. Everything comes out from here. So is something, maybe this thing is just another theory. Oh no, don't worry about theories. Vedanta never started with theories. It started with an experience. And then some guys come and they start analyzing their experiences, and they analyze others' experiences, and they made it a philosophy. So Vedanta was always experiential. Don't sit down quietly and say, oh, I am that Brahman. That will not do. So you'll have to do something about it. So here he is very clear. He's saying, there was one incident when Swamiji was meditating one day. He has a vision. Then he comes to Sri Ramakrishna, who was a Dakshineshwar, and he describes his vision to Sri Ramakrishna. And then Sri Ramakrishna was mighty pleased. He said, I also have seen it. What you have realized is, you have seen is the Brahma Yoni, the womb of Brahman, from where what Swamiji saw was a kind of a silvery triangle from where millions and millions of universes were emerging. There, here, you have the authentication. This is what the Lord has been speaking about. Etad yonini bhutani. This is the womb of all creatures, everything, of the universes. So it's not a kind of a fancy. Swami Vivekananda had a vision, and then we also had Sri Ramakrishna authenticating, saying, yes, what you have seen is the Brahma Yoni, the womb of Brahman, where all these universes are coming out. I was just talking about those fields, it's called different names, but we won't get into it. So from that field emerges all these bubbles, which are one universe here. This is one universe. How do you know that there's another universe at the side beside that? We won't know, because we cannot see it. So everything is bubbling out from that. God is infinite. And from that infinity has emerged all these forms. In this universe, nature has taken this form. Nature in the sense, the Lord has taken this form. We don't know about other forms. And Sri Ramakrishna is very clear, saying, that's the greatest, that's the most heinous thing you can say. God is only this much. Iti, he uses the word. God is only so much. God has a long beard, he has long hair, probably white, probably gray, probably black, we do not know. It can be. There's something called in Jainism Syatvad, maybe. But don't stop there. God has many forms. All these are valid. If you try to limit God to one form, one formal ritual, you can say practice, or one book, that is limiting God. So here we get an idea of an infinite Godhead. Everything is valid because these are all forms. The forms are transitory. They merge. As we know, one form rises, falls, rises again, falls. It's a constant transformation. This transformation is also called Maya. What is real inside that transformation is that consciousness. So don't look at the forms, don't look at the names and forms. Go down to the heart of matter and see that consciousness. This is what it is. Etad yonini bhutani sarvani upadaraya aham kritsnasya jagata prabhava pralayastata. So I am the beginning, I am the end, and everything in the middle also. Everything. Well, this is the opening theme. From the 7th verse onwards, these will now, the Lord himself will say, he'll give us the meditations, like, I am that taste in water, I am the light in all luminous bodies, I am in everything. So these are those, sublime passages that will follow here. This is meditation. But what about this meditation on the name and form and this God here? This comes to only those who are the beginners in spiritual life. As you mature, you will see that form, that avatar, that limited Godhead that you have been thinking about is merging into higher and higher forms. Why do you need a symbol to worship God when Swamiji says, when the whole world is there, that's a symbol of God. There it is. This is the Lord. Yes, so we will leave those sublime passages for next Thursday. We'll stop here for questions if there are. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Shri Ram Krishna Arpanamastu.
There is one question. He's quoting from the Bhagavad Gita. The pure devotee is always within the core of my heart, and I am always in the heart of the pure devotee. My devotees do not know anything else but me, and I do not know anyone else but them. Can you explain the quote from the Bhagavad Gita?
Yes. For the devotee, the pure, what do you mean devotee? The devotee is pure. There are 4 classes of devotees. Those who are the seekers, those who have been troubled by various things, like they are suffering, they pray to God. Those who want worldly enjoyments, they also pray to God. And those who are the knowers, they also worship God. So the pure devotee is the devotees who are called, who have knowledge. So, Yome Bhakta Same Priya, that. So, is God then partial? Doesn't he like everything else? No, he likes that only. But what happens is, there's a preceding verse where the Lord says that this devotee has made me his everything. He has merged his mind, his thoughts, his intellect, his life in me. And so, for that devotee, I am extremely dear, and that devotee is extremely dear to me from this standpoint of bhakti. So, we are talking about things which the Lord has become all these things. So, the pure devotee is one who has identified himself or herself with God, which is the devoted. So right now we have various identifications with the body, and the body is identified with this and this and this, hundreds of things. When all these identifications go, the mind becomes pure and you get identified with the Lord. Now, if you take the Lord as from the Vedantic standpoint of consciousness, pure consciousness. If you want to take the Lord with a kind of a specific name and form, that also is there. As Sri Ramakrishna says, a salt doll went to measure the depth of an ocean and got melted inside. So that same form, that ocean has congealed into this form. So there is a relationship of love. There is that pure devotion that I do not want anything else. So from that standpoint, God is dear to this devotee, and this devotee is dear to God. So from that standpoint, it is spoken about in the Bhakti Yoga. When we come down to Bhakti Yoga, we can discuss this elaborately. Om Tat Sat. Shri Ram Krishna Arpan.